The streetcar made a sound like something giving up. It was the 506 Carlton, running late the way it always ran late in February, and the platform at Gerrard and Parliament was mostly empty except for a man in a good coat standing too close to the edge, and a girl, maybe 8, maybe 9, sitting on the cold metal bench with a plastic bag tucked between her feet. The man's name was Bernard Fawcett. He was 61 years old. He had been a senior partner at Kellerman and Fawcett for 22 years, had argued before the Ontario Court of Appeal 14 times, and had not once in all those years stood on a streetcar platform in the dark without knowing exactly where he was going. Tonight, he did not know where he was going. He was standing close to the edge because he had been looking at the tracks. Not because he intended anything, he told himself that later, more than once. He had simply been looking at the tracks, the way a man looks at something when his mind has gone somewhere he cannot follow. His wife, Catherine, had moved her things out on a Saturday. That had been 3 weeks ago. He had come home from the office to find the bedroom closet half empty and a note on the kitchen counter written on the back of an envelope. The note said she was sorry. It said she had been sorry for a long time. It said she hoped he would understand, someday, that this was not about him. But Bernard Fawcett had spent his entire professional life understanding that when someone says this is not about you, it is always, in some fundamental way, about you. He had eaten reheated soup for 3 weeks. He had billed 91 hours. He had called his daughter once, hung up before it rang, called her back and left a message she hadn't returned. And tonight, for reasons he could not properly explain to himself, he had gotten on the wrong streetcar and ended up at Gerrard and Parliament at 9:20, staring at the tracks. "You're going to drop it." He turned. The girl on the bench was looking at him. She had dark eyes and her hair was pulled back unevenly, one side lower than the other, the way children do it themselves when no one has shown them. She was wearing a winter jacket that was too big, men's probably, or a teenager's, and her boots were the wrong kind for February, low canvas things with no lining. Bernard looked down. He was holding his phone loosely in his right hand, arm hanging at his side, fingers barely gripping it. He hadn't noticed. "Thank," he said. She nodded once, like this happened all the time. He put the phone in his coat pocket and stepped back from the edge. He did not think about why he stepped back. He just did. "Are you waiting for someone?" he asked. "No, is someone to get you?" "Not tonight." Bernard looked up and down the platform. There was no one else. The streetcar wouldn't come for another 11 minutes. He could see it on the board. The temperature had dropped to -14 since he'd left the office. "How long have you been sitting here?" She shrugged. "Since the other one went." He did not know what the other one meant. He thought about asking. Instead, he sat down on the far end of the bench, leaving 2 full seat lengths between them, and looked out at the empty street. A city bus went by without stopping. Somewhere down the block, a restaurant was closing. He could hear chairs being turned upside down on tables, the sound carrying clean and far in the cold. "Is it broken?" she said. "What?" "Your phone. You were looking at it like it was broken." "No," Bernard said. "It isn't broken." She accepted this. She pulled the plastic bag closer to her feet and looked at the departure board the same way he had been looking at the tracks. Her name, he would learn later, was Simone. But not the Simone from his firm's holiday card list, not the Simone who had been his secretary's niece and had come to the office once in a school uniform carrying a poster project. This Simone had a last name he wouldn't know for 2 more weeks, and she was 9 years and 4 months old, and she had been sleeping in the stairwell of a building on Sackville since the building super had stopped locking the side door in October. He did not know any of that yet. What he knew was that her jacket was the wrong size, and her boots were canvas, and the temperature was -14. "Where are you going?" he said. "Nowhere particular." "That isn't a destination." She looked at him sideways. "I know." The streetcar came, and Bernard did not get on it. He didn't decide not to get on it. He simply sat still, while the doors opened and closed, and the 506 moved away down Carlton. And he was still sitting there in the cold with this child and her plastic bag and the departure board cycling through to the next arrival time. "You missed it," she said. "I know. Were you going somewhere?" "No," he said. "Not really." She nodded, like this made sense, like not going anywhere in particular on a February night was a reasonable thing for a man in an expensive coat. He asked if she had eaten. She said she'd had something earlier. He asked what. She looked at him for a moment, calculating something, and then said half a sandwich from the place on Queen that put the extras out by the side door at 8. Bernard had eaten lunch at a restaurant on Bay Street that week, where the bread cost $11. He sat with this information for a moment. "There's a diner 2 blocks from here," he said. "They're open until midnight." "I know," she said. "I can't go in there." "Why not?" She looked at him like he should know why. and Bernard Fawcett, who had argued before the Ontario Court of Appeal, who understood subtext in legal documents and in witnesses and in opposing counsel's pauses, understood this one too. "You can, if you're with me," he said. She looked at him for a long time. Not afraid. More the way you look at a contract before you sign it, reading for the parts that aren't written. "Okay," she said. The diner was called Marchetti's, and it had been there since 1987, and it smelled like coffee, and the particular kind of grease that means the grill has been in use for decades. A woman behind the counter named Pat. Bernard read her name tag, looked at the two of them when they came in and made a decision about 1 second that whatever this was, it was fine. "Sit anywhere," she said. Simone took the booth by the window. She put the plastic bag on the seat beside her and kept her jacket on. Bernard took his off and hung it over the back of the bench and ordered 2 coffees before remembering he hadn't asked, and changed it to 1 coffee and 1 hot chocolate. Simone looked at the menu for a long time. He noticed she was reading the prices first, left column before right column. "Order what you want," he said. "The grilled cheese is good here," she said. "And the tomato soup. Order both." She put the menu down. "People don't usually do that." "Do what?" "Say order what you want and mean it." Bernard looked at his coffee. "I mean it." She ordered the soup and the grilled cheese and a side of fries because, he suspected, she had never been told she could have a side of fries before and was testing whether he'd meant it. He had meant it. He ordered nothing for himself. He wasn't hungry. He hadn't been properly hungry in 3 weeks, which was something Catherine would have noticed, he thought. She had always noticed when he wasn't eating. She would come into the kitchen at 11 at night and find him standing in front of the open refrigerator and not taking anything out. And she would put her hand on his back without saying anything and reach past him for the good cheddar and make him a plate. He did not think about Catherine in this diner, or he tried not to. The trying occupied a fair amount of space. "Do you go to school?" he said. Simone was eating the soup with great focus. She looked up. "Yes." "Which one?" "Spruce Court." He knew Spruce Court. It was 4 blocks east. He had passed it hundreds of times. "Do you like it?" She thought about this seriously. "I like my teacher. She remembers what I said the week before. Most teachers don't." "What do you mean?" "Like if I tell her something on Monday, she'll bring it up on Thursday. She'll say, 'How did that go, Simone?' Most teachers forget." Bernard thought about his articling students. He had 16 of them over the years, and he remembered almost all of them, their small anxieties, the things they'd mentioned in passing. He thought this might be one of the things he did well, without ever having called it something. "That's a good quality in a teacher," he said. "Yeah," she said. She ate some of the grilled cheese. "What do you do?" "I'm a lawyer, like a criminal lawyer." "Corporate." "Mergers and acquisitions, mostly." She considered this. "Is it interesting?" "It used to be," he said. And then he didn't say anything else, because he hadn't meant to say that and didn't know what to do with having said it. Simone looked at him steadily. She had the kind of eyes that did not look away when adults said something they hadn't meant to. "What happened?" she said. "I'm sorry? You said used to be. What happened?" Bernard wrapped both hands around his coffee cup. Outside, a cab went by too fast for the ice. He watched it correct. "I'm not sure," he said. "I think I forgot what I was doing it for." She ate 3 fries. She was thinking. "My mom used to say that about working," she said. "She'd say you have to remember why you started or the middle part'll kill you. Your mother sounds like a wise woman." She was. The "was" sat on the table between them. Bernard did not move past it quickly, because it deserved not to be moved past quickly. "I'm sorry," he said. "It was a year ago," Simone said. "November." He nodded. He did not say she must miss her, because she obviously did, and saying so would not help, and he had noticed that when people said you must miss her, they were usually saying it for themselves. "Where are you staying?" he said, because he had been not asking for an hour now, and the temperature outside was still -14. She looked at him, the contract reading look again. "Sackville," she said. "There's a stairwell." He looked at his hands. He looked at the sugar dispenser. He looked at Pat behind the counter, who was wiping down the coffee machine with the particular efficiency of someone who has been wiping down the same machine for a very long time. "There are places," he said carefully. "Shelters. I know about the shelters," Simone said, and the way she said it closed that subject. He didn't push. He had pushed juries before and knew when a door was closed. They sat for a while. Pat came by and refilled his coffee without asking. Simone finished the fries and then looked at the plate, and then looked at Bernard, and then looked at the plate again. "There's pie," he said. "I see it. Apple or lemon. Looks like apple." He ordered the apple pie. Pat brought it with ice cream without being asked, which told Bernard something about how Pat had assessed this situation. It was close to 11 when they left Marchetti's. Bernard paid at the counter and left $40 on top of the bill, which was too much, and Pat folded it once and said come back in a way that was for Simone and not for him. Outside, the cold landed immediately. Simone pulled the too big jacket around herself, and Bernard stood on the sidewalk and understood that he was about to say something he had not planned to say. "I have a spare room," he said. "My house is 12 minutes from here. The room has a lock on the inside." Simone stopped walking. "I'm a corporate lawyer," he said. "I have a business card. I'll give you my office number and my assistant's direct line, and you can call either of them, and they will confirm who I am. I'm not going to pretend this isn't a strange thing to offer a child I met an hour ago on a streetcar platform, because it is. But it's February." She looked at him for a long time. "Why do you have a spare room?" she said. "My wife left 3 weeks ago." Simone said nothing. "The room has a lock," he said again. "And there's food in the kitchen. Not much, but I can stop at the 24-hour place on the way." She looked down at her canvas boots. He watched her look at them. "Okay," she said. The house on Wellesley was a semi-detached that Bernard had bought with Catherine in 2003. It was 3 stories and too big for one person, and the front hallway still had 2 sets of coat hooks. His things on the left, the right side empty now, a pale rectangle on the wallpaper where her longer coat had hung for years. Simone noticed the rectangle. She didn't say anything about it. He showed her the spare room, which was his daughter Rachel's old room. Still, with the same furniture from when Rachel was in high school. A desk, a narrow bed, a bookshelf with novels Rachel hadn't taken when she moved to Vancouver. There was a small bathroom adjoining it that no one had used in months. "The lock is here," he said, pointing to the bolt on the inside of the door. "You can use this. I won't knock, unless there's an emergency." She set the plastic bag on the desk. She looked around the room in a way that was careful and assessing and not particularly childlike, more like a person who has learned to evaluate spaces quickly. "What's in the bookshelf?" she said. "My daughter's old books. Help yourself." She ran her finger along the spines. She stopped at one. She pulled it out, looked at the cover, put it back. She pulled out another. "Is she nice?" Simone said. "Your daughter?" "Yes," Bernard said. We haven't been speaking much lately. Did you do something?" He thought about the unreturned phone call. He thought about the years of not being home for dinner, of the particular way successful men tell themselves that providing is the same as being present. "I think so," he said. She nodded once, like this was honest enough. "There are towels in the bathroom cupboard," he said. "I'll make up the bed. Just let me get the extra blanket." She sat on the edge of the desk chair while he made the bed, not helping, not watching, just sitting. He finished and smoothed the corner of the quilt. Catherine's quilt, he realized, the blue one she'd kept from her mother, and straightened up. "Good night, Simone," he said. "Good night, Mr. Fawcett," she said. He paused in the doorway. "You can call me Bernard." She seemed to consider this carefully. "Okay," she said, "but probably not yet." He turned the hallway light on low before he went to bed. In the morning, she was in the kitchen. She had found the oatmeal at the back of the cupboard and read the instructions on the package, and she had made enough for 2, which Bernard found when he came downstairs at 7 in a shirt he'd slept in because he'd forgotten, again, to put proper pajamas in the master bedroom after the move. She was eating standing at the counter. She had brought the plastic bag down and it was sitting by the back door. He noticed this and understood what it meant. She had not unpacked, had not assumed anything, had kept her exit ready. He sat at the kitchen table. She put a bowl in front of him without being asked. "I have to go to school," she said. "I know, I'll come back after, if that's okay." He looked up. She was watching him with that careful, contract look. "It's okay," he said. She picked up the plastic bag. She put on the too big jacket. She stopped at the door and turned around and said, "You should call your daughter." "I know," he said. "She probably wants to hear from you. People usually do, even when they're not calling back." He didn't say anything. "Okay," she said. "See you later, Mr. Fawcett." The door closed. He sat in the kitchen in the shirt he'd slept in, with 2 bowls of oatmeal and the sound of the heating system ticking, and he looked at his phone on the table. He called Rachel at 8:15. She picked up on the second ring. "Dad," she said, and the way she said it, not surprised, not cold, just the name, just Dad, was enough. That night Simone came back at 4:30 with her backpack from school and a folded piece of paper she'd been carrying since morning. She put the paper on the kitchen table. It was a drawing. A house with 2 windows lit up and a figure in the doorway. She had drawn it in class, she said, because they were doing a unit on places that feel safe. "You can keep it," she said, "if you want." Bernard picked it up. The figure in the doorway was small and yellow and had something that might have been a briefcase. "That's you," she said, pointing. "I wasn't sure what color your coat was in the dark, so I made it yellow." He set the drawing on the counter against the backsplash where it leaned and caught the light from the window. "Are you hungry?" he said. "Always," she said. "I went to the grocery store." She looked at the counter. He had bought real groceries for the first time in 3 weeks. Not coffee and soup, but actual things. Pasta, canned tomatoes, olive oil, bread that wasn't the end of a bag. Can you cook? Somewhat. I'll help, she said. She pulled a stool up to the counter. She had still not taken the too big jacket off, and he did not ask her to, because he understood she wasn't ready to stop being ready to leave. They made pasta. It took longer than it should have because Simone had questions about each step, and Bernard answered each one fully. The way he did with his articling students when they asked questions that showed they were actually thinking. She stirred the tomatoes too vigorously, and some splattered on the stovetop. And she looked at him, braced. It's just a stovetop, he said. She wiped it up with the same efficiency she applied to everything. They ate at the kitchen table. The drawing was still on the counter behind them, leaning against the backsplash. At some point during dinner, Bernard stopped eating and looked at it, and then looked at his hands, and then looked at the window. My wife used to cook in here, he said, not to Simone particularly, just to the kitchen. Simone ate some pasta. She didn't fill the space with something helpful. She let it be what it was. Do you miss her? She said after a while. I miss having someone in the house, he said. I'm not sure that's the same thing. She thought about this. No, she said. I guess it isn't. 3 weeks passed. Simone kept going to school from Wellesley. She stopped carrying the plastic bag to the door every morning around day 5. She did not stop keeping her things in a certain order, folded precisely, placed at the corner of the desk, and Bernard did not comment on this because he understood it was not about neatness. Rachel came for a weekend in March. She was 34 and lived in Vancouver and worked in landscape architecture and had her mother's eyes and Bernard's habit of going quiet when she didn't know what to say. She arrived on a Friday evening and stood in the hallway and looked at the empty coat hooks on the right side and said nothing. Simone was in her room when Rachel arrived. Bernard said, "There's something I should explain," he explained. Rachel sat on the couch with her coat still on and listened and did not interrupt, which was something she had always been able to do that he had never quite managed. When he finished, Rachel said, "Since February?" "Yes. Dad, I know. You should have called someone. You should have. There are social services. I know. She's been at school the whole time?" "Yes, her teacher knows the situation. We spoke 2 weeks ago." Rachel looked at the ceiling. "Of course you spoke to her teacher. I'm a lawyer, Rachel. I understand the obligations. I've been in contact with the right people. There's a process. Is she okay?" "She's good," Bernard said. "She's really good." Rachel sat with this. "Can I meet her?" she said. He knocked on Simone's door. She opened it after a moment, in socks, with a book in her hand and her hair down. She looked at Rachel. Rachel looked at her. "Hi," Rachel said. "Hi," Simone said. "I'm Rachel. I know. He told me about you." She held up the book. "I'm reading your copy of Anne of Green Gables. I hope that's okay." Rachel blinked. "Yeah," she said. "That's okay." The process, as Bernard had called it, took 4 more months. There were meetings and assessments and phone calls and forms and one terrible afternoon in a government office where Simone sat in a plastic chair and answered questions from a woman with a clipboard. And Bernard sat beside her and said nothing because he was not her guardian and was not allowed to speak for her and had to sit with his hands on his knees like a man waiting for a verdict he couldn't influence. Simone answered all the questions clearly and without fidgeting. When she was asked if she felt safe at the Wellesley Street house, she said yes. When she was asked if she felt like she could leave if she wanted to, she thought for a moment and then said that was the interesting thing. She'd felt like she could leave since the first night. And that was probably why she'd stayed. The woman with the clipboard wrote this down. Bernard drove home afterward and Simone sat in the passenger seat, and they didn't say much until he turned onto Wellesley, and then she said, "I think it went okay." "I think so too," he said. He parked in front of the house. Neither of them got out immediately. The streetlights were coming on. It was late September now, getting dark earlier, and the maple on the front lawn had gone fully orange. "Mr. Fawcett," Simone said. "Bernard," he said. She looked at the maple. "Bernard," she said, trying it. "I want you to know that if this doesn't work out the way we want, I'll be okay. I know how to be okay." He looked straight ahead at the orange maple. "I know you do," he said. "That's one of the things I'm going to spend a long time making sure you don't have to prove." She didn't say anything to that. She got out of the car, and he got out of the car, and they went up the front walk together. On the door, he noticed this, and she noticed him noticing, there was a small drawing taped at approximately the height she could reach. A yellow figure in a doorway and a smaller figure beside it. She had made it in advance. She had been carrying it in her backpack, and she had taped it to the door while he was turning the car around, in those 20 seconds when he wasn't watching. He didn't say anything about it. He unlocked the door and held it open. She went in first. He followed. The hallway had two sets of coat hooks on the left side now, his things, and a small blue jacket that had replaced the two big men's coats sometime in March, and one empty hook on the right. She hung her jacket on the left side. He stood for a moment in the doorway, the cold September air still at his back, looking at the drawing on the door. Yellow figure, smaller figure, two lit windows, the particular crooked line that was supposed to be a path. Then he stepped inside and closed the door, and the hallway was warm.